All right, this should be the last video for this, I think. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. I think this is the first book I've ever read out loud in its entirety ever. So yeah, I won't I won't bother too much. I'll probably speak more after the video. So this would be my last chance to point this out. I know I haven't pointed out for a few videos. My mood's been kind of up and down for various reasons, but yes, over here on the chair we have a corgi with a fez, because fezzes are cool. That being said, it is time to resume and finish. This is 36. Kath had been writing for 4 hours. When she heard someone knocking at her door, it felt like she was standing at the bottom of a lake, looking up at the sun. It was Levi. "Hey," she said, putting on her glasses. "Why didn't you text? I would have come down." "I did," he said, kissing her forehead. She took her phone out of her pocket. She missed 2 texts and a call. Her ringer was turned off. "Sorry," she said, shaking her head. Just let me just pack up." Levi fell onto her bed and watched. Seeing him there, leaning against the wall, brought back so many memories and so much tenderness. She climbed onto the bed and started kissing his face all over. He grinned and draped his long arms around her. "Do you have much writing to do?" "Yeah," she said, rubbing her chin into his. "Miles to go before I sleep." "Have you shown anything to your professor yet?" Kath just started to bite his chin, and she pulled away, looking at the teeth marks. "What do you mean? Have you been turning stuff in piece by piece, or are you waiting until the whole story is done?" I've been waiting to work on Carry On." "No, I know," he said, smiling and smoothing his hand over her hair, "but I was wondering about your fiction writing project. I want you to read it to me when you're done." Cass sat back on the bed. Levi's hands didn't leave her head, and uh, Cass sat back on the bed. Levi's hands didn't leave her head and her hip. "I'm not doing that," she said. "You don't want me to read it? Is it too personal or something?" "No, I'm not. I'm not going to do it." Levi's smile faded. He still didn't understand. "I'm not writing it," she said. "It was a mistake to say that I would." His hands tightened on her. "No, it wasn't." What do you mean? You haven't started?" Kath sat farther back, stepping off the bed and going to pack her laptop. "I was wrong when I told my professor I could do it. I can't. I don't have an idea, and it's just too much. I'm not sure I'm even going to finish Carry On." "Of course you'll finish." She looked up at him sharply. "I've only got 9 days left." Levi still seemed confused. That made me a little hurt. You've got 12 days left until the end of the semester, and about 14 before I go back to Arnold. But as far as I could tell, you've got the rest of your life to finish Carry On." Kath felt her face go hard. "You don't understand," she said, "at all. So explain it to me." "Simon and Snow and the Eighth Dance comes out in 9 days." Levi shrugged. So? "So I've been working 2 years towards this." "Towards finishing Carry On?" "Yes, and I have to finish before the series ends." "Why, did Gemma T. Leslie challenge you to a race?" Kath jammed the knotted power cord into her bag. "You don't understand." Levi sighed harshly and ran his fingers through his hair. "You're right. I don't." Kath's hands were trembling as she pushed through the arms of her jacket, a thick cable-knit sweater lined with fleece. "I don't understand how you could throw this class away twice," Levi said, frowning and flustered. "I have to fight for every grade. I'd kill for a second chance in most of my classes, and you're just walking away from this assignment because you don't feel like it. Because you've got this arbitrary deadline and it's all you can see." "I don't want to talk about this," she said. You don't want to talk at all." "You're right. I don't have time right now to argue with you." It was the wrong thing to say. Levi looked up at her, stricken. Kath fumbled for something else to say, but everything in her reach was wrong. Maybe I should just stay here tonight. His eyes swept over her, more coolly than she would have thought possible. There were two deep lines between his eyebrows. Right, he said, standing up. See you in 9 days. He was out the door before she could stutter out, What? Kath wasn't trying to pick a 9-day fight. She just wanted to escape from tonight. She didn't have time to feel guilty about fiction writing. Even thinking about that stupid story made Kath feel clawed up and open. She lay down on her bed and started to cry. Her pillow didn't smell like Levi. It didn't smell like either of them. He didn't understand. When the last Simon's Snow book came out, it was over. Everything. All these years of imagining and reimagining Gemma T. Leslie would get the last word. And that would be it. Everything Kath had built in her last 2 years would become alternate universe, officially non-compliant. The thought made her giggle wetly, pathetically, into her pillow. As if beating GTL to the punch made any difference. As if Kath could actually make Baz and Simon live happily ever after just by saying it was so. Sorry, Gemma, I appreciate what you've done here, but I think we can all agree that it was supposed to end like this. It wasn't a race. Gemma T. Leslie didn't even know Kath existed. Thank God. And yet, when Kath closed her eyes, all she could see was Baz and Simon. All she could hear was them talking in her head. They were hers, the way they had always been hers. They loved each other because she believed they did. They needed her to fix everything for them. They needed her to carry them through. Baz and Simon in her head, Levi in her stomach. Levi somewhere, gone. In 9 days, it would be over. In 12 days, Kath wouldn't be a freshman anymore. And in 14, God, she was an idiot. Was she always going to be this stupid? Her whole miserable life? Kath cried until it felt pointless, and then stumbled off the bed to get a drink of water. When she opened her door, Levi was sitting in the hallway, his legs bent up in front of him, hunched forward on his knees. He looked up when she stepped out. I'm such an idiot, he said. Kath fell between his knees and hugged him. I can't believe I said that, he said. I can't even go 9 hours without seeing you. No, you're right, Kath said. I've been acting crazy. This whole thing is crazy. It isn't even real. That's not what I meant. It is real. You have to finish. Yeah, she said, kissing his chin, trying to remember where she left off, but not today. You were right. There's time. They'll wait for me. She pushed her hands inside her jacket. He held her by the shoulders. You do what you have to, he said. Just let me be there for the next 2 weeks, okay? She nodded. 14 days with Levi, and the curtains closed on this year. Maybe fighting him wasn't the answer, Simon said. What? Baz was leaning against the tree, trying to catch his breath. His hair was banging in slimy tendrils, and his face was smeared with muck and blood. Simon probably looked even worse. You're not giving up now, Baz said, reaching for Simon's chest and pulling him forward, fiercely by the buckled straps of his cape. I won't let you. I'm not giving up, Simon said. Maybe fighting isn't the answer. It wasn't the answer with you. Baz arched his elegant brow. Are you going to snog the humdrum? Is that your plan? Because he's a... Are you going to snog the humdrum? Is that your plan? Because he's 11 and he looks just like you. That's both vain and deviant, Snow, even for you. Simon managed to laugh and raise his hand to the back of Baz's neck, holding him firmly. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm done fighting, Baz. If we go on like this, there won't be anything left to fight for. From Carry On Simon, posted April 2012 by fanfics.net author Magiceth. 37. Cather. Hey, wake up. No. Yes. Why? I have to go to work. If we don't leave soon, I'll be late. Kath opened her eyes. Levi had already showered and put on his gothy Starbucks clothes. He smelled like an actual Irish spring. Can I stay here? She asked. Here? Yeah. You'll be stuck. You'll be stuck here all day. I like here. And anyway, I'm just writing. He grinned. Okay, sure. I'll bring back dinner. You write all the words, he said, kissing her forehead. Give Simon and Baz my best. She thought she might go back to sleep, but she couldn't. She got up and took a shower. Now she smelled like Levi. Glad not to see anyone else in the hall. At least one of his roommates was home. She could hear music. Kath climbed back to Levi's room. It had been warm last night, and they'd fallen asleep with the windows open. But the weather had shifted. It was too cold, and it was too cold in here now, especially for someone with wet hair. She grabbed her laptop and crawled under his quilt, doubling it up on top of her. She didn't want to close the windows. She pressed the power button and waited for her computer to wake up. She opened a Word document and watched the cursor blink at her. She could see her face in the blank screen, 10,000 words, and none of them had to be good. Only the other person would ever read them. It didn't even matter where Kath started, as long as she finished. She started typing. I sat back on the steps. No, she sat back on the steps. Every word felt heavy and hurt, like Kath was chipping them one by one out of her stomach. A plane flew overhead, and that was wrong, all wrong. Her sister knew it too, because she squeezed her hands like they both disappeared if they didn't. This wasn't good, but it was something. Kath could always change it later. That was the beauty in stacking up words. They got cheaper the more you had of them. It would feel good to come back and cut this when she worked her way to something better. The plane was flying so low, moving so sluggish through the sky, you'd think it was just choosing the perfect rooftop on land. They could hear the engine. It sounded closer than the voices shouting inside her house. Her sister reached up like she might touch it, like she might grab on. The girl squeezed her sister's other hand, trying to anchor her to the steps. If you leave, she thought, I'm going with you. Sometimes writing is running downhill. Your fingers jerking behind you on the keyboard, the way your legs do when they can't quite keep up with gravity. Kath fell and fell, leaving a trail of messy words and bad similes behind her. Sometimes her chin was trembling. Sometimes she wiped her eyes on her sweater. When she took a break, she was starving, and when she had to pee so bad she barely made it down to the third floor bathroom, she found a protein bar in Levi's backpack, climbed back into his bed, then kept writing until she heard him running up the stairs. She closed the laptop before the door opened, and the sight of him smiling made her eyes burn right down her throat. Stop bouncing, Ren snapped. You're making us look like nerds. Right, Reagan said. That's what's making us look like nerds. The bouncing. Levi smiled at Kath. Sorry, the atmosphere is getting to me. He was wearing a red carry-on t-shirt over a long-sleeved black t-shirt, and for some reason the sight of Baz and Simon facing off across his chest was disturbingly hot. It's okay, she said. The atmosphere was getting to her. They'd been waiting in line for more than 2 hours. The bookstore was playing the Simon Snow movie soundtracks, and there was people everywhere. Kath recognized a few of them from past midnight releases. It was like they were all part of the club that met every couple of years. 11:58. The booksellers started sending out big boxes of books. Special boxes, dark blue with gold stars. The manager of the store was wearing a cape and an all wrong pointed witch's hat. Nobody at Watford wore pointy hats. She stood on a chair and tapped one of the cash registers with a magic wand that looked like something Tinkerbell would carry. Kath rolled her eyes. Spare me the theater, Reagan said. I've got a final tomorrow. Levi was bouncing again. The manager rang up the first person in line with great ceremony, and everyone in the store started applauding. The line jerked forward, and a few minutes later, Kath was there at the register, and the clerk was handing her a book that was at least 3 inches thick. The dust jacket felt like velvet. Kath stepped away from the register, trying to get out of the way. Clutching the book with both hands, there was an illustration of Simon on the front, holding up the sword of mages under a sky full of stars. Are you okay? She heard someone, Levi, ask. Hey, are you crying? Kath ran her fingers along the cover, over the raised gold type. Then someone else ran into her, pushing the book into Kath's chest, pushing 2 books into her chest. Kath looked up as Ren threw an arm around her. They're both crying, Kath heard Reagan say. I can't even watch. Kath freed an arm to wrap around her sister. I can't believe it's really over, she whispered. Ren held her tight and shook her head. She really was crying. Too. Don't be so melodramatic, Kath. Ren laughed hoarsely. It's never over. It's Simon. Simon stepped towards the humdrum. He'd never been this close. The heat and the pull were almost too much for him. He felt like the humdrum would suck his heart through his chest, his thoughts from his head. I created you with my hunger, Simon said, with my need for magic. With your capacity, it said. Simon shrugged, a Herculean effort in the presence and pressure of the humdrum. Simon had spent his whole life, well, the last 8 years of it, trying to become more powerful, trying to live up to his destiny, trying to become the sort of magician, maybe the only magician, who could defeat the insidious humdrum. And all he'd ever done was stoke the humdrum's need. Simon took the last step forward. I'm not hungry anymore. From Chapter 27, Simon Snow and the Eighth Dance. Copyright 2012 by Gemma T. Leslie. 38. It was her last Friday night in Pound Hall. There was a boy in her room, in Cass' bed, taking up more than his fair share of space, and eating the rest of her peanut butter. He pulled the spoon out of his mouth. Did you turn it in? Slid it under her door. I'll email it too, just in case. Are you going to read it to me? Kath got the eighth dance out of her bag and dropped it onto the bed. Priorities, she said. Make room. Levi scrunched his nose and tried to suck the peanut butter off his teeth. Kath shoved his shoulder. Make room, and grinned, leaning back against her pillow, patting the bed between his bent legs. She climbed between his knees, and he put his arms around her, holding her close. She felt his chin on the back of her head. Are you getting peanut butter in my hair? It's preventative. When I get gum in your hair later, it won't stay. She opened the book and tried to find their place. It was massive. They'd been reading for 2 days, taking breaks between studying and finals. They still had 400 pages left. They had one weekend left together, and Kath was going to read until she ran out of air. I can't believe I haven't been spoiled yet, she said. I was planning to despoil you later, Levi said, but if you want, we can do that first. I had lunch with Ren today. She almost spoiled me 4 different times. I don't dare get on the internet. People are blabbing all over fanfics. I made a sign to wear my apron that says, "Don't tell me what happens to Simon Snow." Maybe I should write that on my forehead, Cass said. I could make that part of the despoiling. Do you remember where we left off? I dropped the bookmark. Page 319. The humdrum had turned the merwolves against the school, and they were crawling around, dragging their fins, getting everything wet, gnashing their teeth at little kids, and then Penelope Bunce, the hero of our story, cast a spell that made the clouds rain silver. I think Baz cast that spell. Yeah, but Penelope watched. She was instrumental. Page 319, Cass said. Are you ready? Levi jostled her around, kissed her neck a few times, then bit it, pinched Kath between his knees, and squeezed her middle. Ready. Kath imagined his eyes closing, then cleared her throat. The silver bounced like mercury off Simon's skin, but it was drawn sickly into the werewolf's fur. Steely gray lines appeared in the beast's yellow eyes, and it went limp, sloshing to the ground. Simon caught his breath and looked around the lawn. All the werewolves had collapsed, and Penelope was herding the younger kids back into the relative safety of the fortress. Basil strode across the lawn toward Simon, brushing the silver from his black cloak. He wasn't even bothering to hide his fangs. Simon could see them from here. Simon adjusted his grip on the sword of mages and held it up in warning. Baz stopped in front of him and sighed. Give it a rest, Snow. Simon held the sword higher. Do you really think I want to fight you? Baz asked. Now? Why should today be any different than every other day of our lives? Because today we're at war, and we're losing. You're losing, for once. And it isn't nearly as satisfying as I always thought it would be. Simon wanted to argue, to say that he wasn't losing, that he couldn't afford to lose this fight, but he didn't have the heart for it. He was afraid, terrified, that Baz was right. What do you want? What do you want, Baz? He asked warily, letting the sword fall to his side. I want to help you. Simon laughed and wiped his face on his sleeve. It left streaks of blood and silver. Really? You'll excuse me, I hope, if I don't take you at your word, given the last 8 years of you trying to kill me, etc. Don't think I would have killed you by now if I really wanted to? Baz raised a dark eyebrow. I'm not that ineffectual, you know. I mostly just wanted to make you miserable, and to steal your girlfriend. Simon's fingers tensed on the hilt of the sword. Baz took a step closer. Snow, if you lose this, we all lose. I may want a world without you, and a world without your tyrant of a father, but I don't want a world without magic. If the humdrum wins... Simon studied Baz's pale, grey face, and his smoldering grey eyes. There were times when Simon thought he knew those eyes better than his own. Levi giggled. Shh, Cass said. I can't believe this is happening. Times when he thought he could read his enemy's face better than anyone else's. Better than even Agatha's. Let me help you, Baz said. There was something Simon didn't recognize in his voice. Sincerity, maybe. Vulnerability. Simon made up his mind quickly. The only way he ever did. He nodded once and sheathed the sword of mages. Then he wiped his hand on his jeans and held it out before him. Baz locked onto Simon's gaze ferociously as ever, and Simon wondered whether there was too much animosity, too much history between them to ever breach. Too much to set aside or get over. All the curses, all the spells, all the times they'd fallen to the ground, fists and wands swinging and grabbing at each other's throats. And then Baz took his hand. The two magicians, young men, shook hands and shared a moment that held nothing more, for what could be more than understanding. What about Agatha? Simon asked when the moment had passed, when their hands dropped again to their sides. Baz grinned and started walking up the steep hill to the castle. Don't be a fool, Snow. I'm never giving up on Agatha. The problem with playing hide-and-seek with your sister is that sometimes she gets bored and stops looking for you. And there you are, under the couch, in the closet, wedged behind the lilac tree, and you don't want to give up, because maybe she's just biding her time. Maybe she's wandered off, but maybe she's downstairs watching TV and eating the rest of the Pringles. You wait until you forget that you're waiting, until you wait until you forget that you're waiting, until you forget that there's anything to you beyond stillness and quiet. An ant crawls over your knee, and you don't flinch. And it doesn't matter now whether she's coming for you. The hiding is enough. You win when no one finds you, even if they're not looking. When you break from behind the tree, it's because you want to. It's the first breath after a long dive. Branches snap under your feet. and the world is hotter and brighter. Ready or not, here I come. Here I come, ready or not. From Left by Cather Avery, winner of the Underclassmen Prize, Prairie Schooner, Fall 2012. All right, so that's the end of the story. Now I'm going to read the acknowledgments, and I don't think it's there's something at the beginning of the book that basically Rainbow Rowell said to read the book first and then come back and read. So that is what I am going to do. Acknowledgments. Thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone who was good to me while I wrote this book, but especially you, Bethany, who is an excellent, tireless beta and a marvelous friend, and who just goes around making life and the internet better. Forrest, who talks with these characters like they're real people, and Jade, who never gets tired of them. My editor, Sarah, who is fucking awesome, and everyone at St. Martin's Press who worked so hard to help my books find readers, and to help my readers find books. Thank you to Christopher, who is 10 pounds of agent in a 5-pound sack, to Rosie and Laddie, who make me happy, and to Kai, who tells me to write all the words. Also, I decided to write this book after reading a lot, and I mean a lot, of fan fiction. Reading fic was a transformative experience for me. It changed the way I think about writing and storytelling, and helped me more deeply understand my own intense relationship with fictional worlds and characters. So thank you for writing it. Rainbow Rowell lives in Omaha, Nebraska, with her husband and 2 sons. She's also the author of Carry On, Landline, Eleanor and Park, and Attachments. And then we get a little illustration at the end here of all the different characters. All right. So I think it's the introduction. Yeah, it's the introduction. Okay. Before I start reminiscing about Fangirl and showing you its baby pictures, I strongly, even sternly, recommend that if you haven't read the book, you do that first. Read the book fresh and unspoiled, and if you still feel like talking about it, meet me back here. Maybe with a cup of tea and a cookie. Well, I don't have tea. I have my elderberry Mackay, whatever that is, and then I have the rest of my Starbucks mocha double shot. So that's what I got. I do technically have tea in the other room I could make. Oolong tea, if anyone's curious. And I had a cookie the other day, but oh God, the old internet joke. I had a cookie, but I eated it. I think the original meme was like, I was going to give you a cookie, but I eated it. But yeah, I remember that, and boy, 2009 was a very long time ago. Anyway, first read the book. First, if you still feel like talking about it, meet me back here, maybe with a cup of tea and a cookie, and I will tell you how Fangirl came to be. It feels a little off-putting to say this, especially after I told you to go read it, but I wrote Fangirl entirely for myself. My career seemed stalled at the time. My first book hadn't made any waves, and I had a hard time selling my second. And it was getting more difficult to justify writing fiction, to justify all the time away from my full-time job and my kids, toddlers. I remember thinking, this might be it. This might be my last book. And if it is my last book, then maybe, then I may as well write exactly what I want to write. I wrote Fangirl during November as a part of National Novel Writing Month. I liked the idea of a built-in limitation. I could take 1 month to write this weird thing I was considering. This thing I couldn't quite explain to my literary agent. For 1 month, I could lie low at work and abandon my children, and if at the end of that, at the end of that month, I looked down and thought, what is this mess? I could just throw it away. 1 month isn't much to spend or waste on a book. I'd stumble along for 5 years writing my first one. It helped, I think. I was feeling so hopeless about publishing, I didn't think too hard about what an editor might want or what a reader might expect. I could make Fangirl as long as I liked, much longer than my other books. I could try writing a little fantasy. I could have epigraphs and a story within a story, both things I would normally consider self indulgent. I was being self indulgent. Who else wanted this book but me? I let myself push all my I let myself push all my own buttons. Wait. I let myself push all my own buttons. Okay, I did read that right. Fall weather, check. Wool sweaters, check. Nebraska, alpacas, the slowest of slow burns, check. It was it was easy to write about fan fiction, even though I would have been embarrassed to speak about fan fiction at the time. 2011 was a different world because I was writing for me and I was writing so quickly. I didn't have much time to worry about being exposed or embarrassed. I wrote this book so fast, 60,000 words in a month. Uh, the rest over the next 6 months. And I wrote it so happily. I loved being along for Kath's ride. I'd just written Eleanor and Park, a book I knew would end tragically from the first page. That was a traumatic experience. That was like driving two teenagers into a brick wall. Fangirl was the opposite. Kath is loved at the beginning of the book and at the end. She's loved more. Her world gets bigger and warmer, and it was a pleasure to deliver her there. Such a pleasure that I can still pick up Fangirl and happily read a few pages. I mean, no more than a few pages. I'm not I'm not Narcissus himself. I hope it was happy. I hope it was happy. I hope it was a happy read for you. I'm so grateful to everyone who's read Fangirl, and especially to those of you who have reached out to tell me that it's meant something to you. I'm not sure how that works, how you can write a book completely for yourself and end up sharing it with so many people, but I feel like Kath would take heart from I feel like Kath would take heart from this outcome. Kath writes fan fiction because that's the world that makes her happiest as a writer. That's the world she loves. I think you can write original fiction in the same spirit. You can create a world just because it makes you happy. You can write a book just because you want to spend time in it. Maybe you'll get lucky and you won't be the only one. Rainbow Rowell, July 2018. And then it just goes into the book. So that was, and has been Fangirl. And that has been quite an enjoyable read. Oh, and I actually do have a copy of Carry On, and I am embarrassed to say that I've only gotten about halfway through the first book, and I have owned that book for about the last 2 years. Yeah, I feel really bad. It's not that I don't like it, it's just I've been going through a lot of things, and it's hard for me to read. Like, if I wasn't reading Fangirl for somebody, I wouldn't have read it at all, like, most likely, and I probably wouldn't have finished it in the time frame that I did. I'm glad that I did. I really am. Uh, for the person that I am, in fact, making all of this for, I want to apologize and say that I never finished Beartown. In fact, I only got about a fourth of the way through Beartown. Not that I don't enjoy it. It's just it's complicated to say the least. To say it in a video that's gonna be listed publicly, it's complicated, and I don't really want to go into it more than that. But no, I really enjoyed it. If you're still listening, I'm probably just gonna ramble on for a few minutes about stuff. Uh, I will say, as much as I enjoyed the book, I still don't like Levi. I'm sure he's great. I'm sure he's fine. I'm sure he's whatever. I don't like him. I just don't. I don't like that type of guy. Uh, and the speaking as somebody who is bisexual, I mean, I just don't. Um, but like, I also don't like that type of guy for Kath. I don't know what type of guy she should have. In fact, I'll be honest. This is gonna sound, I don't know, um, not in poor taste, but maybe it's gonna sound along the lines of my own like fan fictiony brain. Um, the way I read Kath as a character, I think she would have been better suited off as a lesbian, and I think the book would have been a lot nicer if she had met, like, if she had slowly developed the kind of friendship with her roommate Reagan and became a couple with her. Like, that actually would have made more sense. I know I mentioned either in the last video or earlier, I think it was the last video, that I mentioned, like, oh, she should be with her sister. I have nothing. This is going to get a lot of controversy. I have nothing against um, family relationships that are consensual. It's complicated, but basically, yeah, no, I'm like people joke online saying like incest is wincest, but like no, I think it can actually be heartwarming. It doesn't just have to be like somebody's fetish. Like there's the one guy in Fangirl was like, oh yeah, twins, and it's just like there is probably always going to be those kind of people, but at the same time, like I genuinely think that it's like it doesn't faze me. Like if somebody said that they were dating their cousin or dating their brother or their sister, and even if it was like same sex, like brother dating brother, sister dating sister, like it's to me, I'd be like, yeah, that's awesome. Like that's amazing. But no, like it's kind of funny. Like looking back, I didn't realize at the very beginning illustration of Fangirl that was Kath and Levi because hold on. Oh yeah, if you look at the Starbucks mug back there, it says Cather. And yeah, no, I guess this is like technically the ultimate foreshadowing. Whoa, spoilers! And it's just like, yeah, I'm even looking at okay. I'm gonna do a thing. I'm gonna look at her and I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm looking at her and she does not seem like she belongs with him. Like that's it's not gonna work out. It just isn't. She belongs to be. She needs to be with another girl. I really do think that. Like, I think she would be a really good like lesbian. And yes, I'm gonna say it. In a lesbian relationship, Kath would definitely be the bottom. That's all I'm gonna say. If you're still listening, if you're still listening, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you're listening to this at a time where you wanted to hear my voice again. And that's how I'm going to end this segment. So, thank you. It means a lot. And yeah, thank you.